How far away should your model be from the background? It is a really good question, and the answer is, it depends, which isn't very helpful, but it is truthful. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 different positions for your model and the background, and how that affects your pictures to create at least 3 different looks, but I'll be using exactly the same lighting. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and the first thing I actually want to do is get control of the lights, because I'm going to dial in some settings which will change sort of, well, we'll go through it as we go along, but for now I'm going to dial in 250th of a second, my flash sync speed, f8 for a good depth of field, ISO 200, and at those settings, no flash gives me this, no picture. All the light you see from this point on comes from our flash. So for the first position, I'm going to start with 0 space between the background and the model. Now I've set the camera, locked the exposure down for that, but I want to do the same with the lights. So as we move Chloe forward, the light stays in roughly the same position. So I've got a Flashpoint Explore 300 Pro Mark II as my key light, and just a classic 2 foot by 3 foot softbox. The distance for this, I want to be a standard distance as we move as well, and the easiest way to measure that is to use one international Chloe's arm's length distance. So Chloe, if you can reach into the bottom corner, so I can make this 1 arm's length away. It's not an exact science, but it's close enough. And then I need that light to be f8, because that's what we're working at, so we should check that as well. You could do trial and error, or you can use a flash meter. Chloe, I'm going to pop this near your chin. Perfect, f8 it is. And as long as that distance stays 1 arm's length away, it should always be the same exposure, more or less. But let's take a test photo using this setup. Here we go. Straight against the wall gives us a beautiful light on Chloe and a nice soft shadow that we can clearly see. Now that shadow is important because it adds depth and dimension. It's a really simple look, but does an awful lot in a very limited space. In fact, let's just take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Okay, here we go. Now at first glance you might think this position against the wall is limiting. I mean, you literally can't put the light behind Chloe even if you wanted to. But in fact, it makes you work a little harder as a photographer, because if you move your feet, you can create different lighting looks without having to move your model or the light. So for our second position, I'm going to move Chloe 1 meter, as close as I can, away from the background. So Chloe, that's around about there, if you can stand there for me. So moving 1 meter away doesn't sound like a lot, it's just over 3 feet. However, it does make a significant difference to a photo in a small home studio. The first and most obvious thing is now Chloe is in the wrong place for the light. We have to move the light if you move your subject. So I'll move this a little bit further away. And how far away am I going to put it? You know how far. It's going to be 1 international Chloe's arm's length away. There we go, which is around about there. I don't have to check the exposure because it is the same distance. It should be the same amount of light on Chloe. But what about the background? Well, let's take a test photo, see how this looks. Here we go. So what we have now is great light on Chloe. It looks really nice. But that background is no longer a white background, it's now most definitely a mid-grey background, which is a terrific look, but that's not the reason I've moved Chloe away from the background. So this background is not a white wall, this is just a background with a little bit of a pattern. It's still 1 meter away, but now we've got something that is more interesting than just a grey background. Let's have a look and see how this affects the photo. I'll take roughly the same photo again. And the end result is, well, not a grey background, but a dark version of the background we've just slid in. However, if you look close, I can actually see a fair amount of detail in that background. that gap between Chloe and the background is just there so I can get a blurry background, but I need to do a few things to actually make that happen. And the first one is switch lenses. So this is a 45mm lens, that doesn't really matter. It's an f1.2 lens, and that does matter. The smaller the f number, the blurrier your background can become. However, I need to do a little bit more work, because if I do absolutely nothing, I'm actually going to work at f1.4, I'll explain why in a second, and I take roughly the same photo as before. Okay, no flash, definitely doesn't give me no picture. If I go from f8 to f1.4, I've increased the amount of light that reaches the camera sensor by 5 stops. So I need to reduce that to get this to balance my original exposure. And I can do that with this. This is an ND32 filter. That is a 5-stop neutral density filter. It reduces the amount of ambient light coming through to the lens by 5 stops, which is exactly the same as the amount of aperture I increase the light by. So in theory, no flash should give me no picture. It does. So if I do absolutely nothing other than put my flash transmitter back on, I don't have to change the power, and I can get the picture I'm after. Here we go. Theory works. Same power for the flash, but with a much wider aperture on the camera, I have that shallow depth of field look that gap between Chloe and the background allows me to see. I think we should take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Here we go. Not an exact science, but I think Chloe is roughly halfway between the light and the background. And at that distance from the background, there's enough light to reach it so we can actually see it, but there's enough distance between the background and Chloe that it goes a little bit blurry and out of focus. Two meters is, well, basically the edge of the rug right there. So 2 meters, or roughly 7 feet, give or take. That is further away from the background than it was before. So once again, we need to move the light to take that into account. Keep that the same. So we're going to hit the ceiling a little bit. Let's see if we can get that underneath. And then we're going to bring that out Chloe's arm's length. Ooh, that's going to be... Should have planned that better, but I think we're about there, aren't we? So that should mean that the exposure is exactly the same, whichever aperture I'm using. I'm still going to keep to that 1.4 aperture for now. So let's see how that affects the picture. And this time that background is out of focus, but also very dark. And that makes sense because the distance between the light and the background is increased from where it was before. It's called the inverse square law, but you know what? We're not interested in that, because all I'm interested in is the fact that it has gone darker, because where you have shadows, you have opportunity to add your own light. Let's get another one. The extra gap here is simply because I need the room to put this light, well, around about that distance from the background. This light is just going to throw a bit of light into that deep shadow and illuminate the background. But because I'm a photographer and I like to be a little awkward, I'm going to do this. So without that textured background and without the ND filter and going back to f8 where we started, we should have a very different picture. It's not a mid-grey like we had before, it's a vignetted grey. And that means I've got a little bit more control. We could actually add in some coloured gels, but which colour would you like? Blue or purple? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to see if I can second guess what the most popular answer is before I actually press the shutter. Let's pop that in there. Now for this look, I'm actually going to back the light towards Chloe. I want it to spread out. It needs a bit more room to evenly illuminate this with a colour wash. I'll also need to adjust the power. 2 reasons: it's further away from the background and we've effectively given it a pair of sunglasses with a gel. So let's put it up to maybe 1/32 power and it looks like this. So I think we should take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Ready. Here we go. Now I know 2 meters or about 6 feet isn't a huge gap between your model and the wall, but in my small home studio, that's about as much as I'm ever going to get, and it's plenty for what I need. I've got the flexibility to put that second light against the background if I want to have a more vignette look, or pull it right up against Chloe to make that background just have a wash of colored light. In answer to the original question, how far away should Chloe be from the background? It depends, because it depends on how you want to work and the looks you want to achieve. So having Chloe this far from the background gave us a lot of options with second lights. Moving her back a little bit here gave us a better depth of field effect, and then going right back up against the wall, my favorite place, because it's really simple, quick and easy to get some great photos. The position you put your model relative to your background is entirely up to you. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to find out more, including the gear links I'm using, then check out the description down below. Leave us a comment or a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. And of course, if you haven't already done so, click on that subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.